Gamers all over Waldo. The Dio Brando reference. Today we're doing episode 8 of Welcome to LittleWarGame, and today we have a treat. We're going to go over game 2 of Veni versus Shadow in the LittleWarGame monthly tournament with $100 in prizes. Check it out if you haven't already checked it out. And we're going to see Veni do something that I mentioned in a much earlier video. He's going to show us how to go Rifleman Catapult with no upgrades and do it like a champ. Now, we begin. A couple of interesting things to note about Rifle Catapult. Catapults have, for anyone who doesn't know or you're not too familiar with it, have a minimum range of 3. So they can't fire all of the time. And while they can have more range than a tower, each one of the shots that they fire out gives your opponent the ability to dodge all the shots that they can possibly dodge. We'll upload that in a second. So, and riflemen do a good bit of damage, but they don't attack quite as quickly as soldiers, nor do they have their hit points. So if you're going a composition like Rifleman Catapult, it's very difficult and requires you to a lot of micro, and for you to take careful attention as to where your catapult shots are going, and to make sure that none of your riflemen die. The advantage, however, that it does have is that Rifleman Catapult has an obscene amount of range. Obscene. Like it's ridiculous. They have so much space control and the ability to take a fight on so many areas, and it's very hard to surround. I mean, granted, you can catch the catapults from behind, but they kill. They're like Macross missile massacres. It's death in all directions. And we're going to see how Veni does this against Shadow, and then we're going to flip it on its head and see what you could consider doing if you see this going up against you. So now we load the replay. There we go. It's on Steps of War. For anyone who has not seen Steps of War before, this is actually a fantastic map to do something that has a little more space control like Rifleman Catapult. If you notice, each base has a natural expansion. No way, a ton of circus. A base has a natural, yes, stating the obvious. But on the back of each one of those, as we go to full screen, bing, there's a workshop that can be destroyed on the backside, so you can get hit by a backstab over here in your natural. Also, though, if you don't do that, look at the distance between these chokes. There's the space coming out of the natural for Shadow. It's putting down a very fast house, which might be indicative of going 1 barracks first. And then, look, barely a screen away. I'm not zoomed out or anything. There's the same strip of land over here for Veni, who's stockpiling out money, and means that he's going to go castle first. Now, part of the difficulty you might have with Rifleman Catapult is that your army is constrained by the slowest unit in it, such as, in this case, the Catapult. So it doesn't have a lot of mobility, but it does have a lot of staying power and can take a good fight. So if you're considering Rifleman Catapult, and you're thinking that, oh, well, maybe we can do it on the route 1.5, you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But on a map like Steps of War, where there is so very little middle space, it actually is a much better idea. Here's that castle first that Veni was throwing down. Now we're going to see Shadow go ahead and put up barracks a little bit forward. It's going to put it right here. Now what this means is that Shadow is going to do possibly, I've seen the replay, it's kind of cheating, but I could tell when I was watching this that is indicative that he's going to try and expand after this. The reason I say this is so, this barracks, if you were trying to get as much damage as done as possible and be sneaky, wouldn't have been placed here, because this is exactly where any scouting workers have to go through in order to see what's going on in his base. Also, if you were going to do that, he would put the barracks someplace like here, or here, right out of range, or perhaps back here to attack this workshop and get in that way. Another reason I say that it's possibly going to be a 1 barracks expansion is that it makes sense if he's going for a composition like catapults or riflemen or mages or something with range himself to try and increase the amount of decrease the amount of surface area that can take place back here for soldiers. Now, we're going to see Veni do something smart. Notice that it's 205. On other maps, you want to scout much much earlier than 2:05. You might even want to send your scout out around the 1 minute mark, because about 1:45 you want to make sure that they're doing something, and if they are doing something aggressive, then you can put down a tower, maybe put a worker on it and be fine. But look at Veni's scouting, taking advantage of how comparatively short Steps of War is. He sees the barracks up here, so he knows that there's going to be some kind of aggression. Bam, he throws down the tower right away. Now that looks like an odd tower placement, but we're going to see how Veni has very carefully designed his wall in such a way that this tower is going to be much safer than you would ordinarily think. Veni also got a good second piece of information from this castle that's going down. If he scouted and there was not a castle, he would perhaps pull workers to go ahead and make sure that this watchtower builds more quickly. The reason for that being, if he only sees one barracks, he can expect very heavy aggression out of one barracks. Perhaps there's a catapult hiding in the wings. Perhaps there's another barracks proxied or in proximity of his base somewhere around the map to take advantage of this. But seeing this castle, Veni can feel very, very, very safe. Meanwhile, Shadow's doing all the good things. Now, there's a difference between obviously going castle first and going for barracks first. If you're going for one barracks and then you expand, you might want to consider such things as pumping out Riflemen so that you can be aggressive around the map and poke back workers and take map control, soldiers so that you could possibly do a tower dive, a combination just to have a small army. But the general idea, if you're going for barracks before castle against the opponent who's going castle first, is that you want to go ahead and do some damage with this. Now Veni has a very smart response to this. Remember how we said Veni was going for Rifleman Catapult? Veni, seeing that there was a barracks, if he had not seen this castle, he could have gone for barracks immediately because the barracks churns out faster, gets units more quickly, etc. But Veni, seeing that castle, knows that if an attack is coming, it's not going to be a very large attack. And if a large attack is coming, there's going to be enough time for him to at least get out a catapult and figure things out on that end. Now, another good thing Veni is doing, this is another benefit of having gone castle first, but look at the worker production for Veni. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. If absolutely need be right now, Veni could pull 4 workers, difference between himself and Shadow, to kill the soldier and, well, now 2 riflemen. That'd be kind of hard. But the soldier rifleman that came out, he would be just fine. Now, Shadow's doing a really good job here of keeping up on his unit production. We're going to see these units. Now look at this damage that's going to be attempted here, or this poke that's going to be performed by these units. Notice how there's a soldier and 2 riflemen. What damage can they do against this tower? Not much. Conceivably, they could come back around here and poke the workshop, but they're not going to kill the workshop with the few units that there are before this catapult comes out. And so Shadow, rather than put his units in an inconvenient position, just backs off. Decides to keep some awareness right here on the map. Now, if we look again, look at that worker production. Oh man, this is the part where Veni really starts to ramp up. I believe this is the part where he's going to start, where he's going to start throwing down barracks. In a couple of seconds here, he's going to have a bigger problem. Now, look at the way he got to full worker saturation. He's at 21 workers, and he throws down 3 barracks. If he had seen, oh look, this is why this tower placement is glorious. See how the house stops the surface area from being too high for his opponent? And there's just no way that 2 soldiers and 2 riflemen are going to break through a watchtower that has 5 workers healing it. Also, look at this catapult. It has perfectly come out in such a way that even if this attack were double its size, it would be able to put in a lot of work behind this wall, this semi-wall created by the workshop, and behind this wall as well. If absolutely necessary, Veni could pull workers and screen for them in this area so the catapult could do all of the damage. Now going back to these barracks, since Veni got himself up to full saturation, look, 23 workers, this is ingenious actually. He has 23 workers because 3 of them are building barracks right now. So although there's a few over here that aren't over here, it's whatever. He has the perfect number of units. It's actually really good. Now, he went for the barracks secondly, because he grabbed the Catapult upon seeing. He decided to get his advantage in Catapults when he saw this castle over here and knew he could expect limited problems. And then he threw his barracks down afterwards, since his Catapults are going to make it very hard for his opponent to break in with anything but their own Catapults or perhaps dragons. Maybe a large number of soldiers, but if you've seen that your opponent is going for a castle after one barracks, then it's going to be very hard for them to get enough area. And as I said before, he can just pull and screen. Now, Shadow has an interesting response to this, which is to have made his own workshop and to have made his own barracks. Now, this is actually really interesting from Shadow, but I don't know if it's the best decision. And the reason I say that is this. While some soldier with Rifleman Catapult is indeed very strong, because we're spending this entire episode talking about how Veni's variant is so ridiculously strong. If you go one barracks against an opponent that goes castle first, even if your worker production is spot on, you're going to be slightly behind them in gold, and every trade that you take has to be slightly in your favor to overcome the economic disadvantage. Now, we don't have a units lost, but I believe there was a Rifleman and one soldier, maybe two soldiers, who were lost on Shadow's side, which means that he's lost about 240 resources. If we go over to this tab, we see that, yeah, his worker production, it could be a little bit better, but he's not that far behind Veni. I mean, 17 to 23 is a 6 worker difference, sounds like a lot, but the only real worker difference is 3, since it takes 10 to fully saturate each. And these other 3 workers right now are just builders of things, perhaps scouting for Veni. Now look at this smart way that Veni is moving out. Having gone Catapult, I've seen this in multiple games that Veni has played. When he has 3 Catapults, he has decided that 3 is a magic number. Yes, it is. It's a magic number. Schoolhouse Rock reference for anyone who gets that. Now, he's pushing out with 3 Catapults, and I think that's very smart. I think it's 4 Catapult hits to kill another Catapult. But if we look, his 4th Catapult, bam, wrong person, is rallying out right now. Now, look at this. Veni apparently has been studying United States Civil War history because he sees that his opponent has a roughly equivalent army at 5 soldiers, 5 riflemen, and 2 catapults, which is a scary army for 9 riflemen and 3 catapults. At the very worst, it's even. But he's taken that superior army and taken advantage of how it's spread on the map from Shadow to engage each separate component of it with minimal losses, or if very few losses. Notice how Shadow does a good thing here and trying to force the catapults out of position by moving in with soldiers. But unfortunately, Shadow has lost so much due to the way that Veni decided to engage in. And look, Veni, knowing this fight is going well, is going to go ahead and take a 3rd base behind this. It's only after the main push that Veni is going to go ahead. Come on. Come on. Get it. Get it. No. We'll come back to you. We're waiting on you. It's only after he's engaged very, very well into this army that Veni has decided to go ahead and grab an expansion. And I think the reasoning behind that is, there we go. Oh, man. We knew we were paying you overtime for a reason. And Veni, yeah, Shadow is saying, I guess it's not my lucky day. But Veni showed us something else that's pretty interesting to note if you're not familiar with it. Expanding, generally, except for the very beginning stages of the game, and sometimes even then, is unsafe. So Veni is taking advantage of the time that this attack is buying by forcing units and attention out of his opponent to get his expansion back here. Meanwhile, Shadow started his 3rd a little bit earlier, but this episode focuses more on how Veni is doing, and Shadow being an excellent sport about this, saying, I will practice after this. And the second part is actually awesome. Like, I really hope he, like, here, come on. Come on. Yeah, just a couple of things. Like, we're going to go back over this again.